The Last of Us Part 2 is an action-adventure single-player game released by Naughty Dog on June 19th, 2020. The PlayStation 4 exclusive is the sequel to its predecessor from 2013. The advertised plot sees Ellie returning from the first game 4 years later on a revenge quest to seek out those who had a hand in Joel's killing. It's set in an apocalyptic world where a mutated strain of the cordyceps fungus plagued humanity in 2013. The first game set such a precedent in the game industry, but did the second installment hold up to the legacy it laid before them? No, and here's why. Here at GameShift, we've devised a particular rubric to grade story-driven games, each weighted according to their importance. When you do the math, you get the final score into a letter grade. Here today talking, we have me, Miguel, Hugh, Baron, and Leon.
Hello.
And now we're going to get into the first section, which is graphics. Graphics received a 2 out of 2, and since the aesthetics of the game were very well put together, I think the detail in the skin, their facial expressions, and all the different situations really splashed life and realism into the game. The water graphics and physics, the tracks that are left behind your feet in the sand and snow, the grass and wheat blowing in the wind, all the environmental graphics were detailed and fitting.
Yeah, I think it's definitely fair that their graphics are really good.
I think graphics definitely deserve a 2 out of 2. I did see some people that were complaining about the lack of light, but I think they have to remember that what type of world that this game is based in. It's based in a game it's very dark, and it's also we're in Seattle, and Seattle is a very murky area, and so it's always cloudy there, and then you're dealing with buildings that don't have natural electricity anymore. They've been shut down, so it is supposed to be dark. It's not supposed to be very easy to see. But that's the realistic when you think about the type of setting that it's in. I think they did a really dope job of doing stuff like that.
Yeah, they really captured the feeling, because, Seattle normally is really gloomy, so they really captured that. And if they want to complain about the brightness or how dark it is, just turn the brightness up. It's not that hard.
Baron,
So,
you got anything?
The Last of Us 2 has the will probably be known regardless of the story as having the best graphics of any PS4 game. If you're someone who appreciates fine details, if you spend time staying away from playing the game and just exploring the environments, you'll find a lot more details. Some would even say unnecessary details are included in the game. Certain lighting effects when you're in buildings, when you have lights coming through the trees and it's all spotty over the ground. The explosive things or weapons that have fuses cast light from the fuse being lit, and it's all just so beautiful. If if the game could be rated just on its graphics alone, it would have a perfect score.
Yeah, definitely. So on to the next point of our discussion is ambiance, and for those who don't know, how we describe ambiance is the setting feeling very immersive, as if pretty much the game is really able to express the feeling. It gets you to feel what the character is feeling, not emotionally, but more like environmentally. So for this game example, it got the full 1 point. So for examples is when you're in a dark building with stalkers, you really feel like you're being hunted down, as if you're the character themselves, like Ellie or Abby. Snowstorms felt disorienting, like in reality. The farm section gave off that serenity and calm that Ellie is currently feeling with the scene on the tractor where she's holding JJ. The Seattle's Ground Zero in the hospital, it felt ominous, like there was something more to it. It felt cramped and in a twisted way sacred to the infection, and it felt desolate. That's the word I was looking for, desolate. And it really gives off that vibe. The sky bridge was terrifying for the player as it was for Abby. Like, it really felt like you were in her shoes, and the added camera effect that kicks in whenever you're looking from a high point as her, it was a nice detail. So pretty much overall, a lot of the settings radiated the intended feeling they were to give the player.
Definitely do think they caught the ambiance well. They really did throw you into an apocalyptic world, and it's not cute rainbow sunshines with a little bit of zombies here and there. It's terrifying. feel creepy with every step you take. You see a lot of death around you, whether it's in corpses or dead plants or just things that have been abandoned.
Yeah, to add on to that, like the whole game had a really large feeling of desolation, if that's a word. Like with the hotel, where it's like collapsed and it's like a pit, like an endless, not endless, but seemingly endless pit to the bottom, and the fungus taking over the walls, and like everything combined together, it really like gave that intended, well, ambiance, because that's the word, but
I definitely think that the ambiance was dope. Because it's one of those games where it's never a dull moment. You have to completely always be on your guard. There are moments in the game where you feel like you could relax, like when you're just traveling for a little bit, and then the second you hear those screeches, you have to immediately just start crouching and be on the lookout. But even with that, you still have to worry about moving too fast within this game because you never know when you're going to run into enemies. I remember there was one point in the game where I was running through, just trying to get through the game faster, and then all of a sudden I heard a screech, and they were after me because I've made too much noise. I just had to keep running. But that was an example of me not being on my toes, and so you have to really be on your toes. And when they're chasing you, you feel that anxiety of being chased by disease-ridden, infected people that could kill you at any second. And so I ran for my life. So the ambiance was definitely a 1 out of 1 for me.
Since ambiance can be derived from music and visuals, the different environments that we find our characters placed in, and the different mm, uh, levels of stakes that you can be in at any point in a game. You can be hidden, you can be in combat, you can be in process of being discovered. All of the music and all of the environments work fairly well together. I'm not sure how different the music was from one area to another, but each area felt so unique and different.
mm-hmm.
Um, there's a point where we're in a Chinatown, and if I didn't know anything else about that environment, could recognize that I was in a Chinatown when we were inside of the two hotels that we visit. One was really upscale and regal, and it was beautiful inside, aside from all the dead people that were inside. And when we went into the second hotel, it was like a log cabin hotel, or the rooms were inspired by the log cabin aesthetic, and it really felt like we were in those places. And at every point in the game, as soon as I turned on the stream to watch, I was completely immersed. I didn't hold a controller. I had no input in the game, but I was watching it almost as if it were a movie. Every point of the way, the audio dragged me in, the visuals dragged me in, the different environments kept my interest and kept me interested, kept me attentive.
Yeah. So for the next, we have character development, and this is where it gets hefty.
Here we go.
So I'm gonna start because y'all know I got a lot to say. So, uh, we gave this 2 out of 4 points. It originally was 1, but we decided against it, and we decided to give it 2. So
You're welcome.
while okay, Aaron, while the game showed some emotional slash internal complexity, it didn't feel really developed, and it felt more like half executed. So we didn't really have enough time to play as Ellie to really explore her depth. So when we played her last section in the game in California, it almost felt shoehorned in to kind of remind us like, oh yeah, this is about Ellie too. Most of the time she was bouncing between being caring and being driven by revenge, but the only time we mainly see it is in her confrontation with Nora and somewhat at the aquarium. In Nora's case, it was an excellent character moment for Ellie. Like, I give it props. It was really good, but as the story went on, it really didn't feel the same. At the aquarium, she wasn't actively going to kill Owen and Mel, but ended up doing so in self-defense. So, being shocked at Mel's pregnancy didn't really come off as a humanitarian concern, but more so thinking of Dina, because this ties into the next point a little bit, but they were trying to drive home the pregnancy subplot a lot, and it didn't fit. So most of Ellie's character was just mostly depression and PTSD, which mostly got explored in the last hour of the game also in California, aside from the occasional subtle details in the journal and everything. But it honestly feels like the sequel did more of an injustice to her character in some uh, aspects, because it just feels like it was almost not torture porn, but it was just like
Oh
she's
snap!
sad and sad again, and like, and also in like, anyway, the end confrontation with Abby did not feel fulfilling at all, because it felt like Abby's overly large gameplay section felt put in just to justify the end of the game. It felt as if Ellie's character, or lack thereof, was a victim. It almost felt like Ellie's character and her development was smothered out to make room for Abby's instead. And on the topic of Abby, she ended up having more development than the main character, and that's only slightly because they both were like a pile of bricks when it came to development, in my opinion. She started off revenge driven, got what she wanted, then stayed mostly the same with a little bit of guilt at the beginning and nothing major. Where the part where they were just, and it really felt like they were trying to make her seem like a good person and everything, where Yara was just like, "You're a good person." I was like, "You don't know me," and Yara was like, "I know enough." Like, no, you definitely don't know enough. Like, she definitely murked somebody with a golf club to whatever. But
Bro,
throughout
I
the
don't know
events of
about this trash.
her story, because I'm gonna differentiate it because it's two different stories. Throughout the events of Abby's story, she becomes a little more compassionate through her interactions with Yara and more so to Lev. But her decision to not kill Ellie in the theater showed a little bit of growth, or at least one could think. But it could be argued that she only restrained herself because of Lev. Like, it feels like if Lev wasn't in the theater, Abby would not have spared Ellie, because like Lev was the restraint. But then again, someone could argue that her listening to Lev was development, but I don't think so, because at the end of the day, it's her decision, her as a person. She overcomes her prejudice to scars to help the siblings in the first place, and in the end, they try to do some odd parallel of Abby and Lev to Joel and Ellie, but it felt really sour and in poor taste and almost disrespectful. And aside from that, she gets over her thing for Owen eventually after she home wrecked and let him, get some on the boat. But the one line I'm gonna give to her, the one thing I will give her props for is before she leaves to the island, I believe, where she's like, "Get your priorities straight" to Owen. Best line she said in the game, like 100% perfect, like great development right there. And then that was it. She put Owen's dumbass in his place. It was too late at that point though, since she already stolen from his actual wife. Again, homewrecker. And her somewhat character arc got most of the point in this category. Most of the other characters, like side characters, didn't really have discernible character arcs or development to really mention. Owen was obviously torn between Mel and Abby, but didn't change in the end. He just died. Most semi-important side characters tended to be definitely like surface level type people. Jesse's most lacking development outside of being childhood friend kind of made it hard to be sad when he died. It was more of an "oh well, he died" kind of moment. Tommy seemed to devolve, getting more revenge driven over time, but not being too present outside of a few scenes since we barely had direct contact with him for most of the game. Yara and Lev had some backstory to them, but nothing so crazy that it warrants a point, as you mainly learned Lev's favorite animal, the siblings' family life, and how they got there. And besides that, it's just small stuff. Dina ended up having the most of her development than most of the side characters, since we got some backstory and insight on her through like optional dialogue, which I appreciated. I like building, like, I don't hate her development, well, quote unquote. She didn't have development, but she was built, which is important. Subtle examples of the implication that someone killed her sister when she was young, her aspirations in life, her religious upbringing. While she did feel more like an actual person than most of the characters in the game, she didn't really change much through the game, aside from her deciding to give up on Ellie in the end. And that's it. That's my TED Talk for this point. Anybody else got to say something?
Well, we're not gonna say much since you ate up most of the time.
Sorry.
No, I was gonna disagree.
Me too. I'm gonna disagree too, for a little bit. Go
Go
ahead,
ahead,
Dion.
yeah. No, please help yourself.
I mean, I feel like there was some development. Because that development doesn't always mean the character progresses. Sometimes it means they regress. Because development is being affected by the events of the story. Um, I will argue that maybe we didn't get a chance to really see the development, at least in Ellie. So my argument is that Ellie in the first game, she's 14, but in her brain she's really more like 10, because there were so many things that she was sheltered from and she did not experience at all. She had never been outside up until that moment she finally got with Tess and Joel. That was her first time being outside. She learned about a lot of different things that you would think basic children would know. at least at her age, but she doesn't know those things because she was born into that world and she was kept inside all those years. So she went from being this bright eyed little girl whose eyes are being opened for the very first time, and then in the next game you could and she wouldn't leave Joe's side. In the next game, you could definitely see that there was tension between her and Joe. There was definitely something there that you could tell something had happened. She wasn't speaking to him as much. He really had to try to force conversations with her by talking about the comic books and the flashbacks. Even Tommy said, like, Ellie, talk to him. Like, I can see that you guys aren't talking. She could tell. You could tell there was a very there's a lot of tension between those two. The relationship just wasn't the same, as opposed to how they were in the beginning in that first game. And that's development. I will argue that we didn't get to see that like we saw in the first game. We got to see the development progress over time. We didn't really get to see how that happened in this game. She was just her. That was her mood from the beginning of that game to the end. And you did bring up some very valid points that she did have some development with wrestling between Carrie
Talk to him.
and
Well, you
Ellie
have
was
to
down
do
the
more than
ride.
hi and bye.
She even knew the truth, and she stood. Jesse had the same
Okay,
thing for you.
I'll
Nope.
try.
Okay.
She slid on all of them. They were
Right.
being hunted. They had no idea. They thought scars were their only problem. They had no
Perfect.
idea
The
that she was coming
underdeveloped
for their
generic
heads.
cult, which I'm going to get to in the next section.
Let's start off with some of the side characters and build our way up to Ellie. The side characters. I'd like to talk about the Salt Lake crew. This is ex-Fireflies who joined the Wolves, and the Wolves are one of the two main factions that our main characters, the Trespassers, end up fighting against. From that Salt Lake crew, we have Nora, Mel, Owen. Help me
Abby.
out here. Abby.
It's Nora, Mel, Abby, Owen, Manny, Danny, and then like one other one.
Alright, so those last two that we mentioned, the one Danny and the one we don't know the name of, weren't really important. We should know their names. They were just here and there, so be it. Mel and Owen, their development is sort of linked to one another. I think that Owen is attracted to Mel because Mel is approximately in the same headspace as Owen. She was equally willing to abandon all the factions that they've been a part of and just, to abandon the current faction they're a part of, the Wolves, and just move on to Santa Barbara and try to rejoin the Fireflies. They were cool with that. They had a child. They were okay leaving behind all the unfinished business that Abby held onto and held very close to her heart. Owen's development can sort of be implied because we have some flashbacks with him and when he was younger and when he was trying to become a part of Abby's family, and he failed at that. But he somehow had success with Mel, but his heart still wasn't fully with Mel. His heart was still mostly with Abby, which is whatever. That's not. I wouldn't call that development. That's just where his character was at this point in the game. He didn't really transition from one place to another, but that's who he was. Mel was just there.
Doctor. That's it.
Pregnant, doctor, that's it.
Facts.
Also she had a dog, Alice.
Hey, girl.
Yeah.
Best character.
All right.
Got there.
Best character. All right.
Alice even had development. She went from hating those two little kids to loving them at the end.
She didn't even hate the kid. Bruh.
She barked her.
Now we just throwing development out like it's candy.
No, definitely don't do that. All right. Then we got our two scars / Seraphites, Lev and Yara. I would say that it's hard to see their development because they're still developing or something like that.
Well, I mean, they were pretty stagnant, honestly. Like, it's more like siblings, mom sucks, we escaped, Yara died, Lev became very slightly less cynical, and that's about it.
Yeah.
That's like
L-
all to them.
They didn't really develop. They came into it
They
kind of
existed.
not having an issue with Abby, and they ended with not having an issue with it.
Yeah.
They just liked her more.
Like a lot of the side characters just felt like we're here, we're static,
You were right.
and we die.
Lev and Yara. Lev's development is so unfounded. Like, come the end of the game, spoiler alert, he kills his own mother by accident, and we don't know how that affects him, if it affects him at all.
And they're pretty torn up.
Except he was sad for the brief moment that he had just killed her, until he was discovered by the two that found him. Then his sister dies, and he's really upset, but he's also persuaded to leave for the sake of saving his own life. Maybe we'll see him develop into a more selfish person and standoffish or something like that in the future. But as far as development in this game goes, he didn't develop past that point. And Yara definitely, her development was going from
Having two arms to one.
well, yeah.
I don't know
Right.
if it really counts as development if you don't really experience it yourself. Like if it's just something that's referenced in like a flashback or optional dialogue, like I don't think that counts. Like I feel like it's like a feign or whatever the word is. Like you're feigning development.
Alright.
With
Well, how do you-
feign with a
how do you feel about
GH.
Ellie, Baron.
Hold up, we still didn't hit Dina, Jesse, and Tommy.
Oh gosh.
They relevant?
Yes, Dina, she was pregnant when we met her, I guess, and
That's not development.
she just kept that to herself. Then she opened up to Ellie. So her development was tied to Ellie because they were just developing their relationship. I don't know if you put that in a column for Ellie or Dina's development.
But Baron, I don't
There you
think
go.
that qualifies as development
Help.
though. Like telling somebody you're
finish.
pregnant. I don't know.
Let him finish.
Okay. But I'm screaming inside, but I'll shut up.
Dina, if you could say she developed from somebody, she developed trust in Ellie. For no good reason, really. She developed
I
trust
mean,
in Ellie.
Just because they were together, that's about it. Well, I mean, they've also known each other since kids, so.
That happens.
Sort of true. It's only been 4 years, but they've known each other for 4 years or something like that. Jesse
Done with that.
didn't have a chance to develop. He just learned he was a father, and he was just
No,
a
he
good
didn't.
person all around.
He never
Yeah, he
learned.
did.
When?
No, he did learn that he was a dad. Wait, no. He didn't know it was his kid. Wait, did he? I don't remember. It was
He
so
never
relevant
told
that I
him.
forget.
She ain't tell him.
Yeah, she didn't. Ellie did.
Ellie did. Yeah.
Oh.
She and Jesse talked
Cause
about
they had
it.
that conversation where just like, when we get back, she'll probably tell you or something like that. And then he got shot in the face, and then you're like, oh well, and then that was it.
Mm-hmm.
Almost.
Yeah,
There.
I think he was just all in all a good person, and that's why we couldn't play as him
Yeah.
or wouldn't play as him.
I
He
think
was a
Tommy
good
has some
person.
development, but I'll let Baron continue.
I just.
Okay. Tell me he was a pretty strong character. He started off just like accepting Joel and Ellie's secret, right?
Yeah.
Then he moved on to uh plotting and executing revenge single-handedly. Then he accepted the help of Jesse and Ellie when they got to him. Then he said and started planning their escape from Seattle. That plan didn't go to plan, but he ended up injured, and he became suddenly not okay with letting go, and he got so fixated on getting that final revenge that he screwed over his relationship with his wife Maria, and he insulted and just like was very hateful towards Ellie when Ellie tried to resist re-executing their revenge plan. Uh, yeah, that was Tommy. He went from okay to upset to okay back to upset, then to really upset. Uh, Tommy. All right. So finally, Abby and Ellie.
Oh.
Oh God. All right. So Ellie, her development over the course of the game was subtle. It was subtle, and I don't know why the subtlety was necessary. At the beginning of the game, right after Joel's death, we see that it's traumatized her, but it's hard to tell whether or not, or it's hard to tell how deeply that affected her until we get to the end of the game. When we get to the end of the game, we see that that Joe's death is just like a not a black stain, but like a brown smudge on Ellie's brain. It's just so,
Go.
yeah, she was so traumatized by,
literally haunting her.
yeah, just a loud noise, and she's just in shock and panicking, and she was holding a child at the time, and the child was crying, and she didn't even hear it. She was just so fixated on the flashback she was
The
having
one
to
time you
Joe's
see
death.
PTSD in the game.
Yeah,
No, she had it
and
that same night when she went to sleep.
Again, the one time you like that one like what 10-minute section.
She started having it again while she was drowning the life out of Abby.
yeah,
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
uh,
Relevancy.
but again, it was just very subtle. There are some clues Miguel picked up on, like scribbling of moths and her notebook, sort
Yeah,
of increasing in frequency and intensity
which I
as the
do
game
talk
went on.
about in the story section.
Uh, so there's that. I think specifically about where Miguel is uh, disgruntled about Ellie's development is how we see her act when she's in different circles of people. When she's alone, when we're in that hospital with Nora and she's alone with Nora, I think that's the one time in this game, well, one of the few times we see Ellie's true character, where she's confident, proud, and being dominant over other people and just completely swaggering around without a mask on and just, you know, killing people. I think that's where Ellie has developed mentally, and that's who she is on the inside, and we only see that when she's alone. Because when we see her with Dina, or when we see her with Joel, or Tommy, or Jesse, she's acting more like someone else. Especially when she's with Dina. At the end of the game, when we see Tommy approach her, Ellie doesn't outright say no when he proposes a plan for revenge. She sort of just hesitates and sit there, and then Dina speaks up and says no. Ellie wants to be that nice person, and she wants to let it go, and she wants to be with Dina, and I think she knows the only way she can be with Dina is if she lets it go. And she tried that. She tried that until later that night she had her own revelation that she couldn't let it go. She's not a person who lets things go. She is so fixated on Joel and avenging his death that she needed to do the same thing that Tommy did and just fixate on it until it's done, and then maybe she can move on. And at the end of the game, we see her do one cheeky little smirk after she realizes that Dina's left their home. And I
She
can
leaves the
only
guitar behind.
guess. Hmm?
She leaves the guitar behind. That's like a
Yeah,
sound.
Maybe that's just
she
bleeding into story now.
she left the guitar behind, but it's hard to say where that means her character is going. But I think now,
There you
if
go.
she's cutting her ties with everybody else, we'll see her true character develop more, and we'll see her actual development because she spent a lot of the game around other people, hiding how she was developing inside.
I feel like Abby's development was kind of obvious. You know, she went from hating wolves to,
I feel like
you
we're
know,
also
hating
just like
stars, but you know, helping them out. And me and Miguel talked about this. There's a lot of power when somebody saves your life. There's a lot of power in that. So, for example, like with Ellie, the reason why she just couldn't let that ride is because no matter how mad she was, Joe still saved her life. She never had a dad before that. He gave her a life, but she didn't have one outside at least. She was a sheltered kid, um, in those walls, with Marlene her entire life, and then Joel gave her a life, and Joel saved her life on multiple occasions, and that's why Joel had to save her life because she saved him, and so when he died, she felt compelled. She had to finish it because there's a lot of power when somebody saves your life. It's the same thing with Abby. When those two kids saved her life, she didn't care at that moment that they were scars. All she knew was that she just felt compelled. She had to do something to help those kids out because she wouldn't even be breathing if it wasn't for them. I use an example from One Piece. For anybody out there that watches One Piece, there's a moment where Luffy's grandfather, is yelling at Luffy and said, "This is all that damn red hair's fault. The fool." And Luffy fires right back at his granddad. He said, "Man, I wouldn't even be alive if it wasn't for Shanks. You shut up." You tell his own granddad to shut up, all because Shanks saved his life. It didn't matter that was his granddad he was talking to. That man saved his life. He would not be breathing if it wasn't for Shanks. So to hear somebody talk bad about him was not going to fly with him. There's a lot of power when somebody literally saves your life. And you're gonna defend that person against anybody.
my last thought on this before we go on is just that I feel like we're starting to confuse being like having emotions with character development because there is a difference between having emotions and then actually changing. But whatever. Okay, well we're gonna go to story now. Story. Okay, so
Uh,
my main gripe was with the story. We gave it a 1.5 out of 5. So the plot just felt like a complete mess that was all over the place. But before I list off the bads, I'm gonna list the goods because there are a few. It's not completely bad.
Therapist says start with love.
Yeah, we gotta start with positivity, quote unquote, and then absolutely rag on it. So first, I was a fan of a lot of the subtle continuities that were mostly in the beginning of the game. And most of these things can be seen in Ellie's room, like her Savage Starlight poster, which is from the comic series she loved so much in the first game. The robot toy she swiped for Sam in the first game, and her Switchblade, and some of the pins on her bag are the same as well. Some of the flashback sections for Ellie also show some continuity with the Tommy flashback calling back to Joel's love of coffee and Ellie's disgust for it, which is also referenced in optional dialogue as well with Dina. The last thing I caught in this sense was Joel's clock joke towards the beginning of the game. It was a really cute callback to the optional conversation line with Ellie back in the first game with her book of jokes. Aside from continuity, some of the flashback sections, mainly the museum one, was really excellent in building Joel and Ellie's relationship because it's what we came for. It's the father dynamic. The father-daughter dynamic was really adorable to see again and to see develop. And when he taught her guitar and sang her the song, which bonus to this is that Ellie does try and sing the song Joel sang to her throughout the game, but can't bring herself to, and she gets a little bit more words out every time. In addition, I also enjoyed her journal since it gave us an insight into her mental state and progressing slash degressing character. And the example of this is what we mentioned earlier, which is the increased drawings of eyes and moths shown in her journal. So like as you go through the game, she starts drawing eyes all around the pages and like moths. And the moth I see is like a antithesis to the firefly, because they're like opposites in a weird way that I can't explain.
So what's the negatives then?
I'm still on the positives. Hold on. I gotta give it its credit.
What is
Uh,
positive?
yeah, you guys. This is the only positivity you're gonna hear from me for a bit. So, the dialogue between characters in game felt really healthy and natural. It helped with the immersion and slight character building relationships. But, and this is a big but, all of these things are really small details that I was a fan of. And now we're gonna get to the bad. So rev up those fryers, cause
Rev
we
up those
we
fryers.
we out here. Okay. So you remember the doctor from the end of the first game that I'm pretty sure you had an option to kill. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure that like that really insignificant character that nobody thought about. Oh yeah, it feels like somebody made a whole Wattpad fan fiction on that doctor, and that's what Naughty Dog went with for the story, and Ellie was just shoehorned in for continuity. Most of the game was spent playing as Abby, the antagonist of the game, when in reality, I couldn't care less about her. She reeks of fanfic character Mary Sue, and her section just took up so much of the game that by the time we got back to Ellie, I forgot what she looked like. Do you realize how bad that is, that you forget what your main character looks like? It's not good. I almost hit like the largest bra on that because I was getting annoyed. If Ellie is the protagonist of the game, should we not be focusing on her? It felt like Abby was being forced on our throat so we could care about her quote-unquote struggle and the outcome of the ending. The chronology was all over the place and it started becoming too much and confusing. Like you go from the present to 5 years ago, then back to 3 years, then back to 4, then back again, then 3 days before, and another flashback. It was just like absolute crack. It was just making no sense. The organizing of events was completely messy. Other events made no sense, like when Jesse seemingly randomly showed up on day 2, which, by the way, was very falsely advertised before the games were released, but we're going to get to that later. Okay? It felt like he showed up out of nowhere with no explanation. It genuinely felt like he was magically whisked away to Seattle just to be in the plot. Like, he didn't, like, how do you find us? I don't know. How would you get here? I don't know. Why are you here? Because I'm a character. That's about it. Ellie's character felt pretty weak. The romance subplot and Lev's struggle or whatever felt really unnecessary and added nothing really important to the story. Characters were killed off for what seemed like shock factor. I call it the Walking Dead syndrome, because a problem with the show that was happening in later seasons is that they started killing off characters in like stupid ways, like stuff that's completely out of, or just killing them off just for the shock and be like, look at us, we're edgy, we're bold for killing off. Like, no, like, you're not bold for killing off a character if you do it wrong. It's just stupid. Okay? Jesse died quick without us really having any attachment to him. We thought Tommy died, but he wasn't really present either. So when he assumedly got killed, I was just like, here they go again. Killing people and severely injuring them just for shock factor instead of it actually making sense is not good. Like, you can kill off a character. Like, it may suck. Like, you may love the character. Like, but it's okay to kill one off if it makes sense. And this leads into my gripe with Joel. Joel is a hardened survivor who, by the end of the first game, has been surviving the world mostly on his own for 20 plus years. He learned to be hardened, distrusting, just all of the above. And a good example of this is from the first game's famous "He Ain't Hurt" scene, where they're driving down the street, this guy's saying help, Ellie says to stop and pull over for him, and he's like, Joel says he ain't hurt, and then floors it, and then, it was a trap, of course. So, you mean to tell me that this Joel, our Joel, the man who took out whole groups on his own, the man who survived across the country fighting every day, let himself get caught off guard so ridiculously? The Joel we know would never be so trusting of a new group as to leave his guns at the door, leave himself totally defenseless, and tell them his name immediately. This is like... And yeah, people could give the argument that he got soft from being in Jackson for a few years, but like, I think 4 years is overruled by 20 plus, because that's ingrained in you. That is something that you deal with, and it should be like a mode you snap into. You don't get soft like that. It's one of the worst examples of stupid for the plot that I've seen, is what I call it. Like, while I would have hated it, killing Joel would have been fine if they executed it well, but they didn't. They make you think Ellie's gonna go on this revenge plot, but most of the time it's other stuff like Dina being pregnant, or going to find Tommy, or anything that's unrelated. They felt like a jobbled mess of ideas they wanted all in one game, so they mashed them together without really thinking about it. The game overall just felt in bad taste, especially on certain Abby sections. Like, not only were you forced to play as the character that you despise, the one that killed Joel for most of the game, but they also forced you to fight people you actually care about. Avoiding Tommy at the marina felt really disrespectful in a way, but even more so where I almost wanted to just break my PlayStation, where you're fighting Ellie, you're beating up the person you actually care about, which is like the highest disrespect. Like, how do you figure? Like, how do you actually, okay. Okay. At this point, I didn't want to play the game anymore, but I forced myself to, just to commit and get it over with, because I was like, I already wasted $60 on the game, I gotta commit. And there were so many things they could have done differently, since the plot felt all over the place. Like, Instead of the Abby sections, for example, I would have much rather played Tommy and followed his revenge instead, since it would have been a really nice parallel between him and Ellie and how they go about it. I thought it would have been perfect, but no, we got Abby. So whatever. If they couldn't do this, then at least shorten or just straight up take out Abby's section in Seattle, because it wasn't relating to the actual protagonist. I would have much rather the story focus solely on Ellie and her journey, whether it was her trying to figure out what Joel hid from her, or having to come to terms with being immune and not being able to help. I wouldn't mind Dina coming along either way. I didn't really hate Dina. She was a great companion and helped a lot, but the whole pregnancy issue subplot felt like a TV cliche that was just thrown in for dramatic effect, like a telenovela, like, oh, I'm pregnant! Like, no! Okay? Ideally, however, I would have rather the story be not about revenge, but as I said before, about Ellie trying to find out what really happened in Salt Lake City on her own. But instead, they had to see her find out in a flashback. Like, something so important and pivotal to her person just occurred at a random time during a flashback. Ellie's journey would have been more meaningful if she was trying to find herself on her like discovery journey. Whether Joel was alive or not, it was about Ellie now. And everything felt so poorly executed. It was a genuine shame and disappointment, since the first game was so renowned for its like stellar storytelling. Like, the Abby sections messed up the flow and felt unnecessary. The romances felt unnecessarily focused on. Joel was put in flashbacks just to make us feel better and trick us into thinking that he was more of the game than he actually was. The game felt way too polarized in its messages that it just kind of messed up the story for me, and I really regret having it in my memory a lot of the time. And to top it all off, the game was, like, ridiculously, like, obscenely falsely marketed to avoid early repercussions, from what I can tell. Like, models were swapped for certain cutscenes to make us think Joel was more present and that events happened differently, and just the overall gameplay was completely different than what it actually turned out to be. Only example I'm gonna give, because I gotta stop talking, is the part from the trailer where Ellie's hiding and then somebody taps her shoulder, turns around to Joel, and he says, "You can't do this alone." And then I get to that part, and I'm thinking, oh, this is it. It's Jesse.
I think I'd let you do this on your own.
Just randomly there, which goes back into him just randomly showing up. Like, at least if it was Ellie hallucinating, would have been fine. If it was Ellie imagining Tommy as Joel, since they're related, it would have made sense. But no, they just okay. That's it. That's my piece. That's my bit.
Well, for me, the only issue I really had was the Abby piece. It just felt it was extremely forced. You make us invest in this great game, this great story between Joel and Ellie. Last of Us is about Joel and Ellie. And the proof of that is the fact that after all they did, they ended the game with Joel and Ellie. So it was like, really? Like, what was, so it's like, if you're going to end the game with Joel and Ellie, knowing the game's about Joel and Ellie, what was all this other extra stuff for? And so if you're going to make me invest into this great character that Joel is and seeing everything that he went through, you're going to make me sympathize with Joel, having him lose his daughter, gain a new one, and then save her life. Joel is going to be the hero in my eyes, no matter what.
Yeah.
So for me to see him die, it's not going to be anything but enrage me.
And so viciously.
Then you trying to get me to play against the antagonist in this game, play as the antagonist in this game, and then try to sympathize with her, was never going to work. All it did was irritate me. It was very, very unnecessary, because, like I said, the game is about Joel, and The Last of Us is about Joel and Ellie. If you wanted to give us that perspective, you could have given us that in a side game, the same way they gave us in the side games and all the other games they've done. They gave us side games with Left Behind. They gave us a side game with Uncharted, where they gave us Nadine and Chloe. If you want to play that, go play that. But don't do that with this. And like you said, it was very falsely advertised. Even from the very first showing of the game, where she's playing the guitar and Joel shows up and she says, "It's time, kiddo." She says, "I'm gonna kill every last one of them." We're thinking Joel's in the game. And then every scene we see, like you said, Joel's in certain parts of the game. But as the game started to get closer to release, you could definitely tell that it was about revenge and Joel was going to die, which would have been fine had they stuck to that, which they didn't. It was completely falsely advertised. Even down to the box. You look at the cover of the game, all you see is Ellie. Ellie is on the cover of this game. She's the main character, not Abby. Abby's nowhere near on this cover. She's not anywhere on this game. Even when you look on the back, she's not even on the back. And even the back is falsely advertised. The back says, "Experience the devastating physical and emotional consequences of Ellie's vengeance as you embark on a relentless pursuit of those who have wronged her." Nothing about this says we're going to have to play as Abby. So you literally forced this character upon us. I read a review somewhere that said I
Straight
was
up
too
sucker
invested.
punch.
Yeah, I was too invested, and I feel the same. I was too invested in Joel and Ellie, for you to try to shove this narrative of Abby's dad died and
Yeah, like
oh
boo-hoo.
man, boo hoo, and like she collects coins now because her dad died, and all of a sudden she's going through this thing with this guy, and she's also dealing with her friends dying, and I don't care at
Which
this
she didn't
point.
find out
I'm
about
upset.
until like the aquarium.
Yeah, and I'm upset. I'm still
And
upset at
Nanny.
the fact that Joel is gone, and I want revenge just like Ellie. You made me feel that. That's why I
Yeah.
wanted to continue
It's
with it. I get what they were trying to do, and it worked on some people. They didn't work on me. I
yeah.
wasn't sympathizing with her,
Yeah, I was
so
just like I
it just
don't
felt
care.
really,
Like
really forced. I didn't care. I could care less about her. And had they removed her and just kept it all Ellie and gave Ellie more parts, I thought the game would have been fine to me.
yeah.
They gave Abby a lot of cooler parts that should have been
Yeah,
for
like the
Ellie.
Rat King.
Like the Rat King fight. Like why wouldn't I fight against
And she got like a
Ellie?
flamethrower and a
Ellie, and
crossbow.
she had a flamethrower and a freaking crossbow. And then you
And the
want to make me
hunting
fight
pistol that
against
was
Ellie.
broken.
Exactly. And then fighting against Ellie just really ripped my heart to shreds. I was so
Yeah, I
infuriated.
was just like, you're kidding me. And the thing
But
is,
that's
I
just
had a
me.
feeling because every time I walked through that theater, I was like, this is awfully combat designed. I was like, maybe they're gonna invade the theater, and then I'm gonna wake up as Dina because everybody else got captured, and then Dina's gonna have to like sneak out and kill Wool. Like something that would have been really good, and then they bonked it or whatever. And I'm
But
gonna
like
add two things, and then I'm gonna shut up for this. And I'm sorry, I just thought about it.
you get one thing. You get one thing.
Okay, then I'll just make it one really long sentence.
Yeah.
Uh,
She needed her immunity.
Back to the romance. The first game didn't have any romance, and it was really well done. So you don't need romance in the second game to that extent to make it a good game. Also, the game should have been called The Last of Us 2, not The Last of Us Part 2, because Part 2 connotates that it's a direct continuation of the first game, but it felt really disjointed and bad.
A lot of stuff.
Joel, please get up!
Period. Go, Hugh.
I already went. Leon, go.
Okay.
Well, you all already know my idea that you say that Abby's the antagonist, which is wrong. Wrong. Abby is the protagonist. Whether she's
How?
the whether Abby's the villain or the hero is to be discussed, but she is the protagonist because she pushes the story forward. She is pushing the story forward with her
I don't
actions,
think
with
that's what
what
that
she's
word means.
doing. Protagonist and antagonist are different than hero and villain.
Y'all really trying to play devil's advocate, and it's just not working.
Thing is, like, Naughty Dog makes you feel these emotions. Video games are a
But that
medium,
doesn't
just
mean
like
it's good.
Let him
yes,
finish.
video games and TV, movies are ways to make the viewer feel. And with what they've gotten you to do, they've gotten you to feel emotions strongly towards their characters that they've designed through means that seem really unexpected. And by doing the advertising really backwards and sneaking it around, we're really able to right side hook and just surprise the mess out of you
In a bad way.
in a way that you don't like, but you're very passionate
I
about
get
it.
what he's saying. It's still a great piece of art, but it forces you to have an opinion.
Yeah. And I think they did with Abby, how they forced you to kill the person you love, is a really good idea. And more so on that, it really fits the world that they have built. You can say, oh, it should be The Last of Us 2, not Last of Us Part 2. But in my opinion, The Last of Us is a video game about an apocalyptic future. It just so happens to follow the people that survived, but has the free will to be able to switch and choose which of the survivors they follow.
Then why did they market like that?
Because
Like you could do it like that, but actually execute it well. Don't like
Or just tell me up front.
yeah.
Just tell me that's what's happening.
that's
But
the
you
world.
couldn't sell that. They knew they couldn't sell that.
Because that's the world that they built, though. Thing is, the world they built is evil, hard, and hits you with things that you don't expect.
And it's
And
fine to do that. It's just make it cohesive and make sense.
Just tell me the truth up front. Don't lie to me.
exactly, that's what you want, especially in this apocalyptic world. Don't lie to me, but people still lie.
He is so reaching for like an olive branch or something. It is not
Come on,
working.
man.
Well, since everybody else already mentioned it, let's talk about this marketing for it. It was absolutely abhorrent to not market the game as the story of Abby and Ellie instead of marketing
Exactly.
it as the story of Joel and Ellie.
Exactly.
That's not okay. You're supposed to, especially in the promotional materials and like Hughes keeps saying, the box art, like that was really interesting. Something I would have never experienced because I buy things digitally. But yeah, if so much of the game is going to be focused on Abby, Abby should be on the box art because there are two main characters that we play as. Their names are Abby and Ellie. They should both be on the game, or they should be represented on the box art. They should both be represented equally in marketing because that's who we're playing. That's who we're paying to play as.
They even have Dina on here.
Yeah. You don't even play as her.
So they just get to get away with this.
So, yeah. If they had marketed the game as just like the experience, the story of Abby and Ellie, rather like just saying that this is the story of Abby and Ellie, or you guys should be looking forward to playing as and getting to know new characters in this game. Something, anything other than nothing, would have been better. All right, so that's the marketing bit. The story itself is the story is
Right?
it's a bit uh I agree with Miguel on a lot of points on this one.
Thank you.
Like the Joel relaxing his
Didn't need.
survival mind because of his 4 year stint at Jackson, more or less surrounded by people that he loves and in a new environment, shouldn't have allowed him to so easily forget his own past. He should have known, or he should still be aware that he did something horrible years ago, and people may still be upset about it. May not assume that they're going to find you, but no matter what, if you're in any type of apocalypse type situation, there's no reason you're using your real name when you introduce yourself. There's absolutely no excuse for that. They should have had different names picked out and ready to use if their entire faction has been depending on survival.
Yeah.
And I think they mentioned that they see other people out there sometimes. You
Mm.
should already have code names prepared.
Like when
You
they
should have
traded for
never.
the coffee, they met random people.
Something up.
Right. The people shouldn't have figured out that he was Joel until the people got inside the town. And then they would have had the whole town coming after them. Like, that was just bad. That was bad. I don't like that. It was bad. Um, the rest of the story, about the Abby, I don't want to rehash all the points of the story because we've already talked about most of them. So, Abby being a main character is interesting. I think having the Abby parts there definitely makes the game worth $60. It almost doubles the playtime. Uh, it includes some more bits of the story. I also don't like the way it was presented. Uh, taking just wrenching us away from a character that we've been building momentum with and placing us in the shoes of a new person is bad. I don't like it.
Mhm.
It's bad. I would have been acceptive of Abby's inclusion in this game without them marketing to us by having her story unlock after we experience Ellie's perspective. Because we came here for Ellie, we should get Ellie. And
Yeah.
then we see on the main menu that you've unlocked a new feature and it's part 2 or something like that. And then you start up that game And then you start off in the past as Abby, fighting her father, or something like
Yeah,
that. I
that would
don't
have
know.
been great. I didn't even.
They've done that. They did that with Left Behind. After
Yeah,
you finish Last of Us, you get to play Left Behind.
I didn't even think about that, Baron. That's a good alternative. I would have been fine
Uh,
with that. I would have been fine with that.
Well, what's next?
Um, so next we have controls, which we gave the full 2 points
Let's
because.
let Baron go first on this one.
Okay, what do you think, Baron?
I think I never held a controller.
Makes
Ah, I forgot
sense.
you had to watch.
Yeah.
All right,
So
so I guess it's really just me and Miguel on this one, huh?
yeah, I mean we've it's a pretty short category. Pretty much we said that controls were designed really well, handled really well, and the dodging mechanic was really thrilling. It was like really, it was a really nice addition. You know, it felt really free flowing, like when you did it right, obviously.
Forever
Not when
to
you're.
get used to that. I was getting hit a lot because I was just used to not being able to dodge. And
Yeah, it was nice
how
though.
to get used to it. But I liked how realistic it was. It was very
Yeah,
realistic. Some of it kind of got on my nerves, but it was like you had the
yeah,
people that were swinging the giant hammers.
yeah. I hated that.
They, they were able to get double swings a little too fast. I'm like, fam, this
That's why
thing
I
is
just
heavy.
used the
Ain't no way in the
shotgun.
world you just swung at me twice this
They
quickly.
had a 1-2-3 combo that I was just like, okay, hit.
Especially that last scene where you like everything's on fire
Yeah, yeah,
and
with
you're
the
fighting
dude.
that guy.
Yeah,
Like
that
that
one
was
was. I
I was like, this guy needs to die. I don't know why
yeah,
he's
like he
not.
didn't get me, but the first chick did. The first girl like definitely snapped my neck. But
But
yeah,
yeah, I like the controls. The controls were dope.
yeah, full 2 points. Not much to say about it because controls are a pretty simple category. I know Leon and Baron only watch, so they can't really say anything. So I guess we're gonna move on to the next section if that's okay with everyone.
No, me, it's like controls should be good, especially like that's to be expected. You're a AAA company, and this is your sequel. All you got to do is copy and paste the controls from another good game. It shouldn't. It's not. Shouldn't be topping you off because you made good controls. Actually, that's why you
Hey
all gave it.
man, sometimes you'll be surprised. Controls be shoddy.
It's a story-driven game.
Controls definitely
Yo,
do be shoddy.
that crouch feature, that crouch
I
feature was
like that.
lit.
I didn't mention that either, but the one that's probably mechanics. But yeah, it was still nice with the clicker. Like I had to go slower.
No, I'm talking about when they had to get all the way down your belly.
Oh yeah, the prone. I didn't even talk about that. The prone was really
Prone,
nice
yeah,
too.
prone was
I
lit.
use that a lot. I think this kind of bleeds into mechanics and logic section, but my favorite thing to do is prone, especially when I would just go in the grass and just shoot people with the bow and arrow, like a snake.
It was proning was lit once I finally got the
Yeah,
upgrade to speed it up because before it was taking too long. I was like, all right, you're moving way too slow.
yeah.
All right, what
Uh,
we got?
Next we have replayability, which we gave a whole quarter of a point
Ah,
out of 2. Uh,
Me personally, I'm gonna play it again because I feel like I have to because I spent money on it. But
yeah, same.
I like what's stopping me is because I have to think about the fact that I have to play as Abby again. That's what's irking my soul.
Yeah, like I had to go through all that
I have to go
again.
through that again.
The only quarter of a point that like the only stuff that got the quarter of a point was that the
The
controls and
substance.
actual gameplay were phenomenal. It's just the story was so atrocious to me that I don't want to like touch it with a 6-inch pole or 6-foot
We
pole.
didn't talk about this, but I personally liked the ending. I think the last fight was
Uh,
lit. I think the last fight between those two was lit because they were both battered,
the
bruised,
fight was
injured,
good. The
on their
outcome
last
sucked.
legs. That was a good fight. Um, and I didn't even mind the way it ended. You know, as far as her letting her live after coming to grips with not wanting to be that vengeful person. That's what she was becoming. She used to kill to survive, but she was becoming a person that killed for blood. And I guess she decided she didn't want to do that. And even her leaving the guitar behind kind of just show. I feel like that's
That was a
symbolism for
symbolism
being
of
able to
letting
let it
go
go.
of Joel. But then again, that was a nice ass guitar, and her dumbass lost 2 fingers for it. So whose fault is it really?
But that's
Exactly.
just me. I like the ending. But yeah, let's continue with replayability.
Yes. Well, I mean, we pretty much said everything. That's about
New
it.
Game Plus is nice.
Oh
You said
yeah,
what?
New Game Plus also is an interesting thing. Well, then again, if you forget the story, if I just skip all the story cutscenes,
uh,
then
I think it's a missed opportunity in a game like this to also not give players the option to play through just one side or the other. That's
yeah,
also something they could have done.
yeah,
Mm.
like definite miss the mark right there.
But you can. I know in most Naughty Dog games, you can go back to certain chapters of the game and replay those
I
parts.
think you can, yeah.
If you're continuing with your last save data and not New Game Plus, you can go back to certain parts. They do that in Uncharted, and I know they do it in the first Last of Us, so it's probably the same with this one.
Okay, interesting. So I guess we're gonna move on to the next one now. We have missions, levels, quests. And pretty much, I gave it. What did we give it again? We gave it 2.5 out of 3 points because most were designed really well. They showed off the environment nicely. Like it was really interactive. Like there was, you could do a lot of stuff, like go through crevices, go prone, like we said earlier. You can interact with the environment. Like one of my favorite things was in literally like the last section of the game, where you could like unhook the clickers and runners from the chains and have them attack the people. Like that was really interesting. I just wish they did it more. You know?
That machine gun was lit.
Yup.
I
And
was waiting for a military weapon.
but the half point gets lost because it was easy to get lost at times if you were searching around, and it wasn't like wow kind of like, you know what I mean, like there wasn't like that extra pizzazz because like when you're in downtown Seattle it's really easy to get disoriented.
That was an adventure.
And what was that neighborhood? It's not Haddonfield, that's from Halloween. Whatever the hell, the town that you ended up running into Jesse, that place, those two places were like kind of disorienting for me at least. And I know Huey, you had something to say about this when we talked about it before.
Oh yeah, the one thing Naughty Dog is it's hard. It's very easy to get lost in their games. Especially someone who just recently played Uncharted 4. It's a lot of moments. Like it's good that you're able to expand because these are games that went from PS3 that are now on PS4. So now you have more technology that allows you to expand, and the worlds get bigger and more detailed because of that. And so with that, you still have to find a way to make it clear where you need to go. And a game like that is very easy to get lost. You end up going in circles a lot, running into and the only real way you're going the right way is when you run into more enemies. Like if you
Pretty
you
much.
killed everybody on this end and you run into somebody else in a different direction, you're going the right way. But other than that, it was easy to go in a circle. And especially that part right before you get to Jesse. Oh man,
Yeah.
like the difficulty was lit, but it was like, yo, where am I going? Especially if you
Yeah,
have
yeah.
to run and you're in a dark room and you don't know where you're running. You could be running into a corner or a dead end somewhere, and then you're just screwed because you ran into that dead end because you don't know where exactly you're headed or where you're going. So it's very easy to get lost. I guess that's part of the allure. That's part of the charm of being in a setting like that, where in a world where you're not really supposed to know because it's so dark and it's so everything is kind of like destroyed. There's no way to really tell where you're supposed to go.
We're talking
Yeah.
about level design and missions, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think they did an alright job with subtly hinting at which directions to move. They did alright. It was I think it was consistent, but I can't tell you why because it was just that darn subtle. Like you could sort of see the direction that the game wanted you to go, but there are times where it felt like that direction that it wanted you to go was in different directions. Like there were multiple ways to go, and there was room for emphasis on exploration, and most of the times the exploration is rewarded. Sometimes with a card or coin. If you just enjoy looking at the environment, that's also a reward in itself because again, the game is so beautiful. Um, and the third part of exploration, there were a few Easter eggs, not very many. There was one near a trash can that I only heard like 2 people pick up on. It was a reference to Uncharted, I think. Some little idol or something.
Oh yeah, I heard about this. A trophy. Where was that? So I know I get it on my next play if I do another playthrough.
You went past it.
Are you fucking kidding me?
It looked like there was no loot there, but it was next to a dumpster, and
Was I
there were only
shooting at a statue a lot?
Which day was it?
Yeah, you were.
Are you kidding me? That was it? I am so upset.
I think it was day 2 or 3 of Ellie.
No, it was Abby. Wait, I don't remember anymore.
Yeah. So exploration was good. Level designs rewarded exploration with stuff that you use to craft and cards and coins. Oh, as far as missions go, this is one thing. I'm okay not giving it that last half point because there weren't really missions. There wasn't too much optional stuff. Most of the optional stuff was like picking up all the notes and reading through the notes and getting a little extra world building based on what you read. But absolutely optional. It doesn't really feel like an objective to have in a game. The last thing is that there's no real incentive for using melee weapons. There are a lot of them, and I don't know whether or not the animations are really cool because there's really no reason to use any of them that have really low hit counts or whatever.
The clickers get close and you out of ammo and you can't put your gun on the aim that quick. So it come in handy.
Maybe, but
Yeah, because I for one like I'm always exploring in a lot of the games I play. Like I like to find everything, and it was nice. But I mean, this goes into the collectibles section also, so I'm not gonna say any more. But you know, there's some tea there.
yeah. Okay. So another reason I wanted to mention the weapons thing is that there's no cause for people to get better at the dodging system. It looks like the dodge timing was difficult for people to pick up on, especially with the varying attacks of different enemy types. It was just hard to realize exactly when to dodge or
Mine
how
were
to dodge
amazing.
consistently. We're pretty good, yeah.
Thank you.
But I really kept fantasizing while watching people play, kept fantasizing about having maybe like a completely disjointed character who specializes in melee combat and just having them dance around the enemies, whether they be
I
the
mean, that technically was Abby if you like focused that tree.
oh yeah, you could,
Where are you going?
but not enough. I wanted to be limited to only melee. Like there was that one part with Abby, but it was against another human, which is
Yeah.
less interesting than being forced into melee against the Rat King or a
Oh
bloater or
hell
something.
no. I mean, I'm pretty sure
That
you're
would
trying
be
to box
so
a
cool.
bloater, you gonna die.
Like you try to swing a melee weapon at the Rat King, one of the arms grabs it, so you have to let go of that and pick up a different melee weapon and start hitting it. And then you
Okay,
get it
that
into a stun state and it drops the weapons it has, and you pick up the ones that it drops and start beating it and beat it and beat it.
okay, that
And
actually
just
is an interesting concept.
yeah, just emphasizing the melee and
Your neck is getting broke.
incentivizing getting comfortable
Cock blocking.
uh with the melee and dodging things weren't really incentivized through the level designs.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, well, Leon, what do you think?
Oh, I think that a really big game. It was a really big game, and well, then yeah, definitely say that level design was pretty good in the sense that like you could get lost, but you never really felt too bad because you're still looking around. You're like, oh, it was realistic. That's what I'll say. You could actually get lost in a world like that, and you could actually find yourself pretty screwed over the boat if you did get lost in situations where you really can't afford to get lost. But in times where if you do get lost, sort of just gotta brute yourself out. And the game kind of forgives you a bit. Like it'll give you a hint or two every now and then if you were taking too long based
Yeah.
off the time. But like that's sort of how it is. If you're in an apocalyptic future, you don't have a map, you don't have Google Maps or anything like that, you're gonna be lost, buddy. That's how it is. Them's the bricks. Otherwise, I think it was pretty good because, like, in some spots where they didn't want you to waste too much time, it was pretty linear.
Yeah.
But other, beautiful.
It had like very like that one really open section and then just got like dummy linear like real quick. But
yeah.
it had the illusion of
That part at the
openness.
start was so good.
It was really nice.
So good.
It got me scared though because I was like, oh no, Last of Us 2 is gonna be fully open world, and I got really like nervous. But then it was just like that one section, and just like, okay.
I was a bit disappointed because I was so entranced by all the that first day as Ellie and Dina was so tight. The gameplay there was so tight.
Yeah.
You picked up a map. If you happened to stumble upon it, I don't know if there were other places that you could have picked it up either.
Yeah, I
I
don't
think there
know.
were, but nobody ever did, from what I saw. Yeah, same thing with the weapons. I don't know if there are other places you can pick up the shotgun or stuff. I'm sure there
No,
are,
there's
but
not. I know weapons are like
oh,
specific places. Like for
well,
sure.
that's insane because other people have shotguns and you pick up the ammo from their bodies. Anyway, that first part was so cool. You pick up a map if you happen to find it. She marks off stuff on the map as you find it, and it's like, oh, there's something interesting here. Doesn't write out the names for all the things. That's fine. But she crosses them out and
Yep.
says, "There's nothing more to get there."
I actually
Oh,
talk
it's
about that
so
in the
good.
next section, I think.
Which is
Mechanics and
What?
logic. Thank you for that not dovetail, but transition, Baron. So mechanics and logic
I
got
hate that the rest of the game isn't like the first part.
1.5 out of 2. Most of the stuff made sense. Big fan of the rope physics and the way Abby's ponytail moved really naturally through the air. But small stuff like not being able to shoot through the gap in stairs, or the whole squad knowing where I am when one person had no time to say anything and I killed them. But you know, whatever. And the time I was going up a ladder was left behind me, who then instantly transported across the area and got grabbed, which all made no sense. They all irked me, but that was about it. It was just like small stuff, like glitches and everything.
there was a moment where I threw a bottle across the room and the clickers went straight to me. I'm like, wait,
Yeah.
what?
And there was also like the silencer glitch, remember, Baron, where I had the silencer on the gun, but it didn't show up and I couldn't take it off, but it was still attached.
Yep.
Yep. I was a big fan of the map in downtown Seattle, which, you know, Baron just talked about, as Ellie constantly changed in real time, as if you were actually there, which got me, like, big brownie points. I was just like, give me more. Like, it was a really nice detail, and had really, like, subtle immersion, and I really liked it. Another detail I liked was the weapon upgrade bench, with most upgrades actually showing your character accurately working on the weapon to fix the desired section. But there sometimes like a simple animation of wiping a rag on a gun would play, which really makes sense if you're trying to like
Got a
extend the
whole
barrel.
clip.
Yeah, like
She wiped
extendo
the gun,
clip
the whole gun,
rubs
got a
barrel.
whole extra clip. Got a whole
Yeah,
extra
like
barrel.
what the fuck? Like
What?
yeah,
No. I think those are mostly tied to rate of fire upgrades. Like for a shotgun, if you want a higher rate of fire, if you change
no, you
the
like poked
thing
holes in the thing and you like sawed it or something like that.
that
Like
There
increases
were still
damage.
moments where all she did was wipe it and a whole elaborate thing had
yeah,
happened to the
yeah,
gun.
exactly. Like no, like I'm not gonna ignore that.
You
Uh,
have to lube up guns to get all the mechanical
yeah,
parts
on
to
the
move more
Yes,
inside.
smoothly.
but an extra
No,
piece
on the
should not be
outside as well.
attached after wiping
No,
said gun.
like I'm thinking of the pump shotgun. When you increase the fire rate, you have to make the sliding thing more smooth. And in order
Yeah,
to do
that
that, you
makes
have to lube up the
sense.
outside of the gun.
But to
Yes,
fix
but
the
an
slide,
extra
you don't
piece
rub the
should not be
barrel and
attached
handle
after
with
you
a
wipe off a gun.
yeah, like I get what you're saying, Baron, but also they all it was a little bit of both. But other details I liked. It sounds odd and probably psychopathic, but the death screams really sounded realistic, with like that
Yeah, they were.
erratic change in pitch, like at suddenly like right to the end until like right before they die. Again, nice detail. And then other stuff I noticed was like Ellie being skinnier in California from not eating. The realistic effect that clicker attacks from behind are insta deaths, since you know if you're getting attacked from behind, you can't really defend well, so you're kind of just. And the buff to stalkers also made them smarter and much more terrifying. Uh, when I noticed this, especially when I went through a crevice, one of those crevices in the wall, and the stalker was waiting for me on the other side of the crevice. Like they were like, the AI was smarter. Like they were better, and I appreciated it. You know, the half point just gets taken off for the small glitches.
I think you really hit them all. All right.
Hey, Baron,
How do you feel about the new infected?
the Shambler.
There was more than just them.
It was just the Shambler and the Rat King.
I could have sworn stalkers were new. But, alright.
What? No, the Stalkers first appeared in the section
Or they were better designed, baby.
in the first game, because the Stalkers weren't very present in the first game. In the first game, they were mainly located, and when you first found them was in the section where you're underground in the base with Henry and Sam. Remember when you're with Sam alone and you're trying to get to the other? Yeah, those are all Stalkers.
That was that ugly part.
But they got buffed. But yeah, Shamblers look like chicken nuggets, and the Rat King was a really cool design, and I actually really commend it. Like, I actually geeked about it, and I was like, this is cool. Like, the lead up to his reveal, where he had like that massive, fleshy, like, fungal pit, not really pit, but like room, where like it's like something emerged out of it. I was like, oh, this is gonna be really cool. I
I
knew it was
didn't
gonna be
like
like a
the fact that
conglomerate.
Ellie was affected by Shamblers. If you're immune, you're immune. I don't care how much gas you pump into the joint. If I can breathe a room full of spores, I should be able to not die if you're
Well, I never
affecting
died to a Shambler,
shooting
so I
out
wouldn't
gas.
know. This post was made by the
I,
Not Dying Gang.
I think they had acid specifically or poison, not the same spores.
It
It
could be
wasn't
the
just
force of
spores
it,
about.
or the heat. I don't know. I haven't died to it, so I can't say. But if that's everything for this section, we're gonna move on to bonuses slash collectibles in game, which we gave a 1.25
Ooh.
quarter out of 2. I just realized that was a
Look at
pun.
that.
So some of the
1970.
stuff like the coins were an unbelievable hassle. Like, I honestly hated looking for the coins because they're so small and they kind of blend in from a distance.
And
But
we didn't care about heavy.
yeah, like, I understand the significance of the coins, and it kind of reminds me when I was a kid and I would like collect them and everything. But they're honestly. But the trading cards were really nice, and the documents really gave a splash of world building to the game. Like, you see outside character stories and how they most of the time ended, like and like the relationships with other people living in the world. Like, I uh I think one of my favorite ones that I remember was it was like a note that was like a message board almost between this girl and this other apartment. If you remember, Baron, I think it's when you're playing as Abby and you're with
Oh, the
Yara.
apartment joint.
Yeah, the apartment where, remember, it was just like, oh, I left some food for you. Oh, John got shot. Like, all that. Like, I don't know. I just liked it. I just liked that kind of like down to earth feel to it. And some of these documents actually gave insight and explanation into some of the infected in certain areas, like when you're in that town that I don't remember the name of, that I keep calling Haddonfield, with Boris, the clicker hunter. There was a note where he like trapped all these people in a garage that was like had spores in it, but one of them scratched him on his way out, and obviously he got infected. But you can go into that garage and there's like a whole bunch of runners in there, and it's like a nice like like a really subtle backstory to the infected in the environment, which I really appreciated, you know. And that's about everything I caught. So
Some
Anybody else?
very good detail.
yeah. Oh, one more thing. The Dr. Uckman card is an almost definite reference to Neil Druckmann.
Like there were a lot. Like you wanted people to play your game, do it. Your game already has so much to offer. There's some things that we didn't have to force. Like it's cute that Abby collects coins and all that, but like
Yep.
you got other stuff to focus on right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Because like you can ask Baron because he watched my footage that I was playing. I run around a lot, like in an area. Like I gotta make sure I didn't miss anything, and then I kind of just look stupid. Cause like it looks like I don't know where I'm going. Well, I know where I'm supposed to go, but I'm like making sure I get everything in the room before I leave.
I like cards because it's nostalgic. It's connects to the first game that she still obsessed
Yeah,
with.
it's the same style as the comics almost. It's like that kid like appeal. But so finally, my favorite thing is musical score, which we gave a 3 out of 2 because yeah, that's legal in our rubric and it's worth it because the musical score was phenomenal. Like, just as perfect as the previous game. Like when I found out I'm so sorry that I'm gonna butcher your name. When I found out Gustavo Santolala, I'm just gonna say Gustavo. I found out Gustavo was on the soundtrack again, I was happy. Like, he knocked it out of the damn park again, like he always does. And the added benefit is like the little guitar section sprinkled throughout where you can like play the guitar, and like my favorite sections, by the way. And also seeing Gustavo's battle in the game was a nice nod. Um, and I think somebody brought this up at some point. But the fact that a lot of people can actually like play actual songs or just play their own songs on Ellie's guitar is like it's a really nice, interesting take on the musical score because it's interactive and it sounds nice. Like one of the things this game did right was their partnership with Taylor. I believe it was Taylor, right? Not Gibson, the guitar company.
I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
I think it was Taylor. But yeah, their partnership with Taylor was like really, because it was like it was like a really, like, I just geek over the music. Like, I'm definitely, if I can, I'm definitely gonna like download the soundtrack on Spotify because I already had the soundtrack of the first game, because it's just that good and soothing and atmospheric is the word for it.
Depressing.
Anything else you guys want to add? I know I kind of geeked about this.
I'm good. I think the music was on point.
Mm-hmm. Leon Baron.
I like that remix of that 80s song.
Yeah. Right when she started singing "Take on Me," I was like, "Oh, get it!" I was so excited because I was like, "Oh my god, I know!" I was like, at first I was like, "Why does this sound so familiar?" And then she started saying, "I'll be gone," and I geeked. I was just like, "Oh my god, it's "Take on Me" by Aha." But
But it well too. They put music in good spots where it needed to be, like ambient, scary music,
yup. Like
and
the music and the ambiance tie together in perfectly. You know what I mean?
that's,
Like
Uh,
the ambiance exists part mostly because of the musical score accompanying it. Not mostly,
yeah.
but like part. You know what I mean? Like it's a vital part of it.
I'm surprised that people were unaware whether or not they were in active combat because the music dips down so low when you go back into stealth.
Which is a nice detail. I just realized because of the, you're trying to be stealthy and it quiets down for you and everything. You know what I mean? But yeah, so I think we hit all our points. So when you do the math of all of our grading, uh, The Last of Us Part 2 gets a 68 out of 100, getting it a D plus.
Slightly,
It's sad
slightly below.
it's really sad to give it this score because the first game was such high standards and so great. I mean, I had a feeling like sequels of a lot of stuff tend to suck, especially when they're so like years apart that people try and have too many issues with trying to be modern or trying to do new, trying to be too new or too this or too that instead of staying true to the original vision and game. And I feel like this grade is well deserved of this game, not of this series, because again, Last of Us was such a great thing that I looked forward to for years, and it kind of got waffle stomped. And do you guys have any remarks on how this grading turned out? On
Uh,
you know,
two things. Two things. Well, three things. One, I agree with the grading, and two, I feel like I feel like the HBO show is gonna do. I feel like it'll
bomb.
do the game justice.
I'm so scared it's gonna bomb.
HBO does a really good job making shows. This is a,
I'll
if you're
hold
going,
you
if
to
you're
that.
going based off the, well,
I'll hold
listen,
you to
if
that.
you're going based off the first game, there's no way this could be. There's no way
So
this
wait,
can
it's
be
off the
tracked.
first game?
It has to. Where else they gonna start?
So it's not confirmed.
But where else they gonna start?
Last of Us 2.
How are they gonna start? All right, you know what?
You don't know. You don't know.
This
I don't trust anything these days, okay?
There's no way you're going to just start from two and not go over the first one. If they go off the first one, there's no way the show cannot be lit.
You say
So
that,
with that in
but
mind, I think it'll resurrect this a little bit.
I hope.
But
I
and
pray.
my last point is if there is a part three and there's any kind of Abby in it, I'm cool.
Uh,
Like if part three is Abby and Lev, I'm cool.
I
If
don't.
part three has any Abby in it, I'm cool. Like it needs to be. I need to know where Ellie went, and I need to know what's going on after that.
I'm sorry, but like personally, I don't think I can get a Last of Us 3. Like it's just that my viewpoint on on the game, or like my just opinion and feeling has been so scorched and tarnished that I don't want to risk getting a third installment because it feels like they already went off the rails, and even if they try and put it back on the tracks, it's not going to fix it. That's just me. That's just me. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion. I just feel hurt.
They could redeem it. You never know if they do it right. I might watch somebody play it
Yeah,
just based on
same.
Abby in it, and then I'll go get it.
The
So
thing is, I'm pretty sure with where they've gone, you say they're off the rails, but I think they're just getting started. I feel like if they do make a 3, they're gonna go even further.
yeah, further into bankruptcy.
Oof.
I think they're smart, very smart.
Because the thing is, people got duped on the second game. The third game, they ain't gonna take chances. They're gonna be like, boom, you ain't catching me with this.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely not playing any of that. I'm gonna
Exactly,
be watching.
you're like,
I went out and got this game immediately as soon as
yeah.
I woke up.
People, my
That happened if
friends,
it's number 3.
I think like one or two of my friends pre-ordered the game, and they heavily regretted it.
Some people bought actual Last of Us PS4s,
Yeah,
knowing that even knowing that a whole new system was coming out months later. They bought like
they
Last of Us
definitely
2
they
PS
tricked us.
PlayStation
They got I'll give it to them. They got our
that's
necks. They
covered in
really got
Ellie's
our
tattoo.
necks.
Even more bad marketing. The Last of Us. See, that's why I know The Last of Us is about Ellie and Joel. Because even the concept for the PlayStation and the controller is covered in Ellie's tattoo. Everything just reeks of Ellie. But what did we get?
Abby,
Abby.
the Tonka truck,
They didn't even explain why she's buff.
right?
The survival.
They could have given us the sequence of her working out.
Like a fucking like footloose type 80s montage.
uh, she must have been planning the revenge of her father for a while, and she started working out as soon as she started plotting revenge. The wolves had extensive
Yeah,
facilities.
yeah,
Uh,
and I could have sworn I
as
had like one thought more.
for an overview of where the series is after this game, uh, just on paper, opening up the experience of the Last of Us series to include more characters sounds good, especially if we're opening it up to more characters with the end goal in mind, like reaching a point in this canon where there are the last few humans on this continent with no way to go to other continents and explore for life otherwise, or the last resistance of humans against the infinite hordes of the dead, or
Mm-hmm.
something like that. Uh, it sounds good on paper, but the way they
Execution.
executed this is unfavorable to say the least. And
Yeah.
sort of squashing that opportunity just because they weren't clear is even in their developer notes or whatever that we're supposed to be expanding the universe with this game, and the players are supposed to have an open mind for new characters.
She's safe.
Yeah.
Something like that.
As
She's
a
just sick.
closing remark,
Kind of sick.
that
She's
I've
fine.
thought of, I feel it's very important to have, like, as any company, not just game development company, it's very important to have goodwill with your base, your customer base, because if they trust you, they're going
Hell, where
to
are you?
want to give you more business,
You okay?
and they're gonna want,
Your friends out there rushed me.
they're gonna come to you more. But if you if you pull what this game pulled with the false advertising and marketing and just like obliterate duping of the fan base, like you're gonna lose a lot of goodwill. Like it happened to me. Like I don't trust. At least I don't trust Naughty Dog right now because of this. You know.
They're already in motion for what they're gonna do for the PS5.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is, but
I just find it like you know what I'm
just
trying to
don't ruin
say.
Uncharted if they go back to that. Just don't.
Nah,
Yeah.
please let Uncharted stay ended. Please don't hurt my baby. Don't. Oh my god. I'll actually die of like a broken heart. Um, but yeah, that's
Well,
my.
thank you all for listening.
I hope. Let us know what you think. Get a safe discussion going. Don't start yelling at each other because I will rapture you.
Let us know in the comments. Please follow us. Please subscribe. Please follow us on Instagram at We Are Game Shift. Thank you guys so much for tuning in.
Tune in for our next review whenever it is.